I have a thing for villains. A serious thing. I'm basically a villain groupie. So, of course, when he decided he was done with life after the finale, I was the only one stubborn enough to stay. Don't bother trying to stop me, Leo said, voice flat and distant. I've already made up my mind. He emptied a bottle of sleeping pills into his hand, swallowed them dry, and lay back with eerie calm. 3 seconds later, I leaned over him and kissed him like a sinner claiming a relic. He jerked upright, coughing and shoving me away. What the hell are you doing? I pouted. You're not going to be using that face anymore. Seems like a waste not to give it a proper send-off. His glare could have melted steel. When the great villain fell, everyone scattered. The hangers-on, the admirers, they vanished as fast as his fortune. The once bustling mansion was silent now, hollow, like the man sitting inside it. They're all gone, he muttered, head bowed. Why are you still here? Because I hadn't gotten what I came for. If he knew what that was, he'd probably die again, this time from rage. He didn't expect an answer anyway. There's nothing left for you to take, he said bitterly, pushing himself to his feet. A fit of coughing shook his frame, and for a moment, he looked fragile, almost human. But even then, even sick and ruined, he was exquisite. My fingers itched just looking at him. Unlike everyone else, I didn't care about his wealth or status. I only wanted him. I've always been a collector of beauty. A pretty face could ruin my entire day. As I got older, my standards climbed until no ordinary man could even make my pulse skip. Then Leo Hayes appeared. One look and I was gone. That face, perfect symmetry wrapped in quiet danger, was the kind you could worship or destroy yourself over. And I was happy to do either. I didn't care that he was the villain, that he'd lost everything to the so-called hero. His downfall didn't scare me. It fascinated me. When everyone else abandoned him, I stayed. Not because of his money, but because I couldn't walk away from the man himself. While I was lost in my thoughts, Leo had already climbed the grand staircase, disappearing down the hall. A sudden dread hit me. He looked too calm, too ready. I ran after him. The door was locked. I pressed my ear against it. Boss, why'd you lock the door? I'm not done annoying you yet. Silence. Heavy and dangerous. I dug through my purse until my fingers closed around a small silver key. I'd made a copy weeks ago, just in case temptation ever got the better of me. The lock clicked. Leo turned as I entered, a bottle still in his hand. His tired eyes dropped to the key I was holding. You copied my key? I smiled smoothly. Arthur gave it to me. Said I should look after you. A perfect lie. Arthur's original key was long gone, probably buried somewhere with all of Leo's other loyal followers. Which meant I could say whatever I wanted, and no one would ever prove me wrong. Leo didn't even have the energy to challenge me. Or maybe he just didn't care anymore. I don't need a babysitter, he said coldly. Get out. I pretended not to hear. Hungry? I could make you some ramen, I offered sweetly, sidestepping closer. With one subtle nudge, I kicked a fruit knife further under the curtain. Whatever he had planned, I wasn't about to let it happen. Not before I got what I came for. He gave me a long, sharp look, like I was the last mosquito buzzing around a battlefield. Everyone else left. What? You think I'm going to rise from the ashes? I'm finished. You're delusional. I blinked at him. So dramatic. Sure, maybe I'd gotten my job in his company through a few connections, but I'd worked hard to stay close to him. Like the time I forgot to bring him a towel after his shower, just so I could deliver it personally. Or the times my fingers accidentally brushed against his hand while handing him coffee. Or when I adjusted his tie and let my palm rest against his chest just a second too long. That wasn't delusion. That was dedication. I glared at him, furious on behalf of all my perfectly executed accidents, then stomped on his shadow for good measure. Just wait, I thought. Once I've had my way with you, we'll see who's really the fool. Until then, I'd endure. Leo Hayes had probably never met anyone quite like me, a woman so annoyingly persistent that death itself had to take a rain check. Every time he locked himself away, I'd show up seconds later, unlocking the door like I owned the place. I didn't argue, didn't lecture. I simply existed beside him, a quiet shadow refusing to vanish. Eventually, he stopped trying to hide. He glared at me one evening, face pale and furious, then poured a fistful of pills into his mouth. I was faster. My fingers clamped onto his jaw, prying it open. I dug the pills out before he could swallow, earning a disgusted cough in return. After that, Leo went completely still. When he finally spoke again, his voice carried a strange, exhausted calm. What is it you want from me? He asked. Money? There's 50 million in the safe. Take it. Please just take it and go. Disappear, he added, voice cracking. Why won't you just disappear? He was unraveling. His pride, the little he had left, crumbled before my eyes. I didn't answer. I only watched, quiet and unmoving. And in that silence, something inside him broke. I placed the key on the table and stepped out of the room. The mansion sank into a deeper stillness than ever before. It seemed this was really the end of Leo Hayes, once feared, once worshipped, reduced to a lonely man planning his own death. He sat there until the last strand of sunlight vanished. Then, like a tired old soul, he opened a drawer. Inside sat a bottle of pills, the very one I'd been searching for. So that's where he'd hidden them. I froze in the dark corner where I'd been secretly watching, holding my breath. Don't try to stop me, Leo said quietly, not even turning his head. My decision's final. My heart raced. I didn't dare move, praying he didn't mean it this time. But he did. He tipped the bottle and swallowed the pills as if they were candy. I lunged forward, ready to intervene again, but his hand shot out, catching my wrist with surprising strength. His eyes were strangely gentle. This is my choice, he murmured. Let me go. For a heartbeat, I hesitated. Go do something that makes you happy, he whispered. Stop wasting your time on me. And just like that, he lay back, still and silent. I wiped the corner of my mouth, trying to smile through the sting in my eyes. All right, I whispered. If that's what you want. Leo looked angelic in sleep, serene, peaceful, every line of his face soft and unreal. I stared for 2 seconds. Then impulse one. I leaned in and pressed a quick kiss to his lips. Then another. Then another. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Suddenly, the corpse moved. Leo bolted upright, shoving me away so fast I fell on my backside. His ears burned red as he glared down at me, half fury, half disbelief. What the hell are you doing? I blinked up at him, feeling wronged. You said to go do what I love. And I love you. So, technically. Shameless, he spat, his voice trembling with outrage. Even for a villain, he'd clearly never met a menace like me. His chest rose and fell sharply, his face twisted between rage and exasperation. I crossed my arms. Well, are you still dying or not? I need closure here. He didn't answer, just gave me a look usually reserved for gum stuck on your shoe. I tapped my chin, waiting. Nothing. My patience gave out. I reached for his waistband. His hand shot out like lightning, gripping my wrist tight enough to hurt. Get out. I smiled sweetly. You sure? It could be your last chance to feel something good before you go. His jaw clenched. Out. With what I could only describe as zombie strength, he hauled me up, carried me to the door like a sack of potatoes, and threw me out. He snatched every key off me, glared one final time, and slammed the door in my face. Rude. I dusted myself off and sighed dramatically. Fine. If that's how you want it. Then I circled around to the side of the mansion, where I promptly got stuck in the window. Apparently, every meal Leo skipped had somehow migrated to my hips. I wriggled, pushed, and flailed like an oversized cat trying to escape a fence. The sound of my struggle must have drawn him, because soon Leo was standing there, staring at me with a look that screamed utter defeat. I tried for a smile. Lovely weather we're having, isn't it? What do you want now? He asked flatly. I pretended to think, then brightened. My keys. You stole my property. Do you know how expensive good locksmith work is? Hand them over. A sharp laugh escaped him. So, you admit you made copies. I froze. That's not the point. He rolled his eyes and walked away. Boss. I called after him. Don't be mad. It was a joke. Come on. Haven't I worked hard for you? Help me out here. Literally. Go team. Rah-rah. He didn't even glance back, just sat down at his computer and started typing. Unbelievable. Was he really going to leave me half stuck to die? After everything we'd been through? My chest ached dramatically. You heartless man, I whispered, before breaking into an emotional rendition of It's All Coming Back to Me Now. He ignored me completely. Curious, I craned my neck. He wasn't working, he was watching something. My stomach dropped when I saw the screen. Security footage. Oh no. Was he actually checking to see if I'd broken in and touched him? The insult. What kind of pervert did he take me for? Okay, so maybe I had held his hand, and brushed his chest, and maybe admired his abs once or twice. But still, Leo clicked on a video. There I was, standing outside his room, grinning like a cat that caught a canary.
Wait.
It's not what it looks like, I blurted. Let's talk about trust. I'll even pay you $50 to delete that video. He ignored me and fast-forwarded. The footage showed him drinking milk I'd brought, falling asleep peacefully. Then me, closing the door and giggling to myself like a lunatic. A bead of sweat rolled down my back. There's nothing weird there, I swear. Okay, fine. I cried. Maybe I held your hand, but that's all. Leo didn't pause. He even turned up the volume. And then, echoing through the room, came the sound of my own voice. Your hands are huge. If your hands are that big, then well, you tell me. Whoa, they really are. Your lips look dangerously kissable. One tiny peck. If you don't refuse, I'm taking that as a yes. Loud, obnoxious smooching noises. How many abs do you have anyway? I'll count. Several emphatic slaps.
Ha. Oops.
Apparently, the security system had both eyes and ears. I peeked at Leo, who had gone from incandescent rage to a kind of cold, terrifying calm. His voice, when it came, was flat and measured. He'd moved past yelling into something worse. So this is your version of doing nothing? He asked. At that point, I had nothing left to lose. Half my body was dangling out the window, so I raised my hands in surrender. Your Honor, I plead guilty with no defense. Leo just stared, stunned by how shamelessly I'd flung decorum out the window. We held each other's gazes, two people separated by nothing but sheer disappointment. Then he stepped forward and offered a hand. I saw it coming, like a dragon flicking its tail, and I wiggled backward, dropping out of the window in one smooth slide. You won't hit me, I shouted from the bushes. He only looked up at the empty frame, expression a mixture of disbelief and contempt, then slammed the window shut with a thud.
Blocked.
Bolted. No escape. I crawled toward the doggy door, hopeful, only to find it jammed from the inside. He had even locked that. Did he think I was a Houdini wannabe? Fine. If he wanted a game of exclusion, I'd leave on my own terms. The staff noticed immediately. The butler, with his practiced sympathy, chimed, Miss, you look more distraught than I've ever seen. A maid whispered, Miss Shaw, does he really refuse you? He knows who you are, right? That man's lost all taste, another said. I soaked up the gossip like a spa day for my ego. Hush, I replied, voice low and theatrical. It is my duty to love him, no matter how poorly he treats me. Then I went to the garage, picked a sleek sports car, and tore out of the driveway, dramatic windswept hair and all. I was on my way to drown my sorrows in the nearest bar. I slid onto a stool and ordered the strongest thing on the menu. Your usual, the bartender said, and placed a drink that tasted like nostalgia and trouble. Perfect. I downed it in one go. A raucous group stumbled in behind me, loudly dissecting Leo's downfall. Remember how arrogant he used to be? Good riddance. I drifted toward them, glass in hand. When a drunk bumped into me, my bracelet skittered and smashed on the floor. I picked up the pieces like a calm assassin. That was a $10 million bracelet, I said very, very evenly. Compensate me. The drunk laughed, and his friends closed in, all swagger and bad decisions. Who do you think you are? One snarled. You can't mess with Mr. Zhang. I smiled, cool as milk, and gave the signal. Within seconds, my security team had surrounded them. A suited man leaned in, waiting for orders. Miss Shaw. Make them pay $10 million, I said, and if they refuse, call the police. I walked out, leaving drama and a little chaos behind me, sipping the rest of my drink like it was a victory. A boy nearby pointed at my milk-based cocktail and squealed with envy, which, honestly, was adorable. Taste I thought runs young. Night fell and the mansion felt like a locked vault. I slipped the key into the door with a grin. He had only made one copy of anything, obviously not expecting me to be so thorough. Turns out, Leo was more paranoid than competent because the door refused to open, bolted from the inside. He thought he'd outsmarted me.
Cute.
I set my forehead to the wood and sighed, but then, because subtlety is my middle name, I produced a few tools, and in no time the lock gave a soft click. The door swung, and I slid inside like I belonged. There he was, asleep and oddly cute, curled around a pillow. Even with his face smushed, he looked unfairly perfect. I eased closer, leaned in and whispered in his ear, Leo, for the love of all things, please don't die. He startled awake and, before thinking, swung a fist that landed square on my face. I clutched my nose and started crying, loudly and melodramatically. What the hell was that for? I wailed. He blinked, sleep fog lifting. I thought you were a ghost. I pranced around clutching my nose, then felt a trickle.
Blood.
My knees went weak and I announced, with full commitment, that I was fainting. I collapsed into his arms, which, it has to be noted, are very comfortable.
Hello, chest.
He sighed, exasperated. Stop rubbing against me, or get out. I shut my eyes and decided to play dead. Eventually, I really did fall asleep. When sunlight poured in, I woke to find the bed empty. Panic flared. Boss? Are you alive? I called, searching every room like a very dramatic bloodhound. Finally, a guest room door cracked open and Leo stood there, looking exhausted and haunted. Can you please stop making noise? I'm trying to sleep. I mouthed zip it, then unzipped and asked, blithely, Can I sleep with you? I vow to be unobtrusive. No, he slammed the door. Rude, I thought, and sulked. Behind the scenes, I wasn't just Maya Shaw, professional pest and Leo's ex-secretary. I was also president of the Shaw Corporation, which was a little detail people tended to forget when I was busy being theatrical. I checked my calendar. A meeting had started hours ago, and I had been delightfully absent. How could they proceed without their president? I gasped into the phone. Liam, practical as ever, made it clear I'd been missed and that my absence had consequences. I hung up, momentarily scandalized, then soothed myself by staring at my bank account, which, happily, had many zeros. Crisis averted. A knock at the door broke my reverie. A woman's voice floated through, and at first I bristled, assuming rival or lover. I stormed downstairs, ready for confrontation, and then froze. Standing there was Leo's mother, Brenda, sharp as a hawk and blunt as a hammer. She demanded money, like it was a birthright. Give it to me, she snapped. Leo said he had none, face like stone. Brenda's eyes swept the room and landed on my necklace. She pointed at me, venom in her finger. You give me that. I feigned ignorance. Leo, finally pushed past whatever remained of his patience, pointed to the door. Get out. Then Brenda shifted gears, claws fully out, ready for a spectacle. The air smelled faintly of family ruin and ill-gotten diamonds. Was I about to stand by and let that woman get away with it? Not a chance. In one swift motion, I whipped out my phone and declared to my imaginary live stream, Hey, everyone, it's Brenda from E Street. You know, the mahjong queen who throws chairs when she loses? Her son went broke, and now she's here terrorizing him for cash. Brenda lunged, her expression pure fury, but Leo caught her before she could grab me. I seized the chance and delivered a swift kick to her rear, propelling her right out the front door. When she tried to barge back in, I waved my phone at her like a sword. One more step, and this goes viral. Trust me, the internet eats people like you alive. Seething, Brenda snatched her bag and stormed off. I exhaled. Thank heavens she was too old-fashioned to realize I had 0 followers and no intention of posting that clip. Leo turned toward me, throat tight. Maya, he said quietly, thank you. My heart nearly stopped.
Words.
Actual, genuine words from him. I waved him off with mock modesty. No need for thanks. A kiss will do. He stayed silent.
Typical.
To express his gratitude, Leo decided to cook dinner. While he chopped vegetables with that same calm precision he used for emotional damage, I paced behind him, deep in thought. Brenda's visit had brought up a serious red flag. I couldn't stand meddling mothers, especially ones who treated their kids like personal ATMs. Leo's childhood was a tragic checklist: bankrupt father, absent mother who only came crawling back once he got rich. And Leo, desperate for love, had fallen for it. If he stayed that gullible, no amount of abs would save him from my rejection. He noticed my restless eyes. Maya, he said finally, what is it? At last, an opening. I squared my shoulders. I don't date mama's boys. And definitely not ones who can't tell when they're being used. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded once. Understood. She won't bother you again. That's more like it, I thought, my heart doing an embarrassing little flutter. Then I noticed something strange. Leo could actually cook. The aroma alone was sinful. Still, I wasn't about to eat blindly. I snuck a piece of short rib the moment his back was turned. Crispy on the outside, melt in your mouth inside.
Perfect.
Figures. The man looked good and cooked even better. A dangerous combination. When he returned, I hid the evidence, folded my napkin over the bone, and pretended nothing happened. When he finally sat down, I took a few dainty bites, acting casual. Then I smiled sweetly. They say the fastest way to a woman's heart is through her stomach, I mused. Well, congratulations, Chef Leo. My heart is officially yours. Silence. I leaned forward. So, when's the wedding? Don't keep me waiting, fiancé. He said nothing, just placed another rib on my plate. Don't think food can distract me, I warned between bites. I expect a clear answer. Are we dating, or are we getting married? He finally set his chopsticks down, expression unreadable. Tell me something, Maya. What do you even like about me? Without hesitation, I said, you're ridiculously hot. His eyebrow twitched. And I thought about it. Great build. Fantastic. But, I gave him a shy look. You know, everything else. He stared at me like he was reconsidering his entire existence. That's all. Pretty much, I said, nodding solemnly. Now, back to my question, dating or marriage? Leo let out a cold laugh, grabbed a plate of short ribs, and dumped them all into his own bowl. Someone was mad. Honestly, what else did he expect me to say? That I adored his financial ruin? His charming misanthropy? Some men just don't understand romance. Fine. No short ribs, no problem. The cola chicken wings were calling my name. I ate with heroic spite until I could barely move. Afterward, I sprawled across the sofa, phone in hand, scrolling through social gossip. The headlines were all about Damien Croft and his darling Nina Reed announcing their wedding. Figures. With her help, his empire had doubled in size. Leo, on the other hand, was the tragic villain left behind. I glanced toward his room, half expecting to find him brooding in a corner or writing bad poetry. If he saw the news, it might push him over the edge again. For the rest of the evening, I behaved. Not a single prank. Then, close to midnight, when most people were asleep or thinking about dying dramatically, I slipped under his bed. When he stirred, I whispered, "If you plan on dying tonight, could you give me a little notice first?" Leo sighed, long-suffering. "I'm not dying. Not anymore." "I don't buy it. The thought of you messing with my corpse," he said dryly, "is enough to keep me alive forever." I grinned into the darkness. Hey, results are results. Call it unconventional therapy. It turned out Leo had stopped sulking and started rebuilding. He was actually getting back on track. When I offered to fund his comeback, he shook his head. "I still have money." I assumed it was pride talking. Then I saw the balance in his account. Apparently, bankrupt in villain language still meant filthy rich. I felt my eye twitch. "If you're sitting on this much cash, why were you planning to die?" He looked up, eyes calm, voice sincere. "Money's just numbers to me." I was bored. Life didn't feel worth it. I blinked. And now? His gaze softened, sweeping over me. Now it's interesting again. Unbelievable. The man was an emotional fraud wrapped in expensive fabric. I crossed my arms. "You're impossible." He just smiled faintly, which annoyed me more than anything. Leo bounced back faster than I expected. He built a new company from scratch, the kind of comeback only someone who'd already climbed out of a ruin could pull off. He knew how to squeeze value out of scraps, how to turn a humiliating loss into leverage. The hero and heroine, morally solid as ever, no longer threatened him. Damien Croft had moved on, his sights elsewhere. But Leo wanted a big partnership, the kind that would put him back on the map, and the big name he needed to win over refused to answer his calls. That company?
Mine.
I paced in front of him until he finally said, quietly, "Maya, what do you want to say?" That was my cue. I folded my hands behind my back and put on my most reasonable face. "I can get you that deal with Shaw Corporation. I will help. But you must promise me one thing." "What?" "You cannot lock your bedroom door at night." There was a pause, and I could swear his disappointment sounded almost audible. Maybe I was reading too much into it. I made a mental note to observe his next moves. I went home to round up reinforcements, namely my sister. Isabel, co-president of Shaw Corp and a force of nature, glared as soon as I walked in. "Flattery won't change my answer," she said, peeling my hands off her arm like I was sticky candy. I tried every tactic, from the tragic to the pathetic. "Izzy, you're my only sister," I whined. "Please." She played the long game, refusing until finally she relented, on one condition. She believed my crush on Leo came from not having seen enough men. Her cure? A string of carefully curated blind dates. She rattled off candidates, each more boring and less hot than Leo. The suggestions were earnest, but my reply was simple. None of them were Leo. She sighed, threatened to slap me, then dragged me to meet a perfectly decent boy, Ethan Chen. The date was painfully bland. Ethan was pleasant in the beigest possible way. I wanted to escape fast. Then Leo appeared, like a thunderclap in a polite drawing room. "Sorry," he said, placing himself between me and Ethan. "Maya already has plans with me." The man's presence did more than interrupt. It rewrote the scene. Ethan, courteous and unbothered, suggested gently that I get to choose. That gave Leo his opening. He turned to me, half smile, low voice, and said, "Maya, didn't you want to count my abs? Tonight, you can count them however you like." My heart did a stupid somersault. Of course I chose Leo. I mumbled apologies to Ethan and practically dragged my treasure home. We slammed the door, closed the curtains, and launched into private mayhem. He teased about daytime decorum. I declared that once the curtains are closed, it is officially night. I promised to make him see stars, kissed, bit, and nibbled my way through a very productive evening. For a breathless moment, his face went blank, then he proved he could match me, blow for blow, until my brain short-circuited and all I could squeal was, "No, no, please no more." While the supposed hero and heroine got engaged and continued their sunlit arc, Leo, the villain who should have faded, began his true story. He impressed my sister, mostly by throwing money at her projects, which, to be honest, worked. I, a lifetime freeloading prototype, found myself curated, fed, and generally spoiled by the man I'd once only wanted for his body. He proved surprisingly generous in every sense. He kept asking me, like some lovesick quiz show host, to recount how I'd fallen in love. I answered, blunt as ever. Lust at first sight. A weakness. I wanted his body. He clamped a hand over my mouth, tired of the confession. "Never mind," he said, which annoyed me more than anything. The truth had layers, though. We'd known each other as children, before his family fell apart. I remembered him once offering his allowance when I sat alone, a small, sincere kindness he promptly ran off before I could ask more. He'd been kind, not brilliant and unbearably handsome. I'd wished in secret for him to be mine even then. When we reconnected as adults and I discovered his supposed destiny in a romance script, I took matters into my own hands. He wanted to die? Not while I was around. Oh, and the sleeping pills? I'd replaced them months ago with sugar pills because I was tired of theatrics. He could eat the whole bottle and at worst end up with a toothache. Problem solved in my book.